have another outstanding guest here with me today. Her name is Jennifer, and she is the Vice President of Sales for Filament Games. Now, I spend all of my time meeting wonderful people, and she is someone I connected with on LinkedIn, and I was just amazed at her games, her system, and I'm going to say something, and she's probably going to get a little mad at me, but so is life. A lot of people do. I'm going to ask her about this later. You're a STEM mom, so you are amongst the group of us who consider ourselves or call ourselves STEM moms, and I just think it's so cool. But we're going to talk about all of that later. First, a minute. Okay. But first, I want you to take the time to introduce yourself to our guest.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I loved it. I felt very special when you asked me to join the call, and I'm really excited to talk to your audience today. So I'm Jennifer Javornik. As you said, I'm a Vice President of Filament Games, and I feel so lucky to work there. I've been there for 6 years, and Filament Games, their mission, our mission, is to create playful experiences that improve people's lives. So I always say we're just like a regular entertainment video game company, but the difference is that when students or any age person plays our game, we want them to have an entertaining and engaging experience while playing the game, but we really hold ourselves up to challenging ourselves, to designing it so whatever you took from the game you take into your real life. So we really focus on transfer. For a lot of the clients that we make video games for, a lot of times that transfer is knowledge transfer. So you learn something new through playing the game, and we want you to understand how it applies to the real world. But sometimes it's other things. Sometimes it's a mindset shift. Sometimes it activates you to take action. Sometimes it's a behavior change. So I love the domain. I think in terms of looking at the research and my own experience, seeing it develop kind of up close with students over the last 6 years, I really believe there's no better way to learn.
I know I was looking at the games, and you sent things to me several weeks ago. I'm trying to turn this thing down. You sent games and stuff to me several weeks ago, and I've fallen in love with the programs and with the process. And I like the fact that it's not just, oh, you sit here, you play video games, and you don't take anything from it. Everything that I looked at and read about and touched, it was, you learned from it, you took from it. So you gained information and knowledge, and they were all fun. So tell us a little bit.
Had that experience.
I mean, it was, because I'm sitting there, and over the weekend I just kind of played around with the stuff because my jet lag was finally over. And I'm like, this is so cool, because there was one where you taught people CPR.
Yes.
And it was not like, a little game. You had a real person there, and you were doing all of this, and you're looking at the compressions and stuff like that. And I was reading through everything, and I'm like, wow, do you know how many young kids or people in general, don't really know what CPR is all about? And,
And it's funny, because if you learned, like I trained to be a lifeguard, so I learned how to do CPR when I was 12, 13. But it's funny, we worked with a client that we followed the current recommendations of the AHA. It's all changed. What you taught, what they taught us, there's no more mouth to mouth, 30 quick compressions. And that's an interesting one. We made that game specifically because the way that people in the medical community learn CPR is through mannequin practice.
Right.
So they have mannequins that they can do compressions on, and definitely knowing where to position your hands and getting the right depth of compression is really important for CPR, and something we cannot teach through an app. But something that mannequins don't teach you, which is why they wanted to make the game, is the rate of compression is so important that you don't go too fast or too slow. So that's something where in our game, you not only learn the procedure of CPR, but it really helps you hone in on what the proper compression rate is. So yeah, it's a great example.
So it's stuff that you take away. It's not just stuff that, oh, you ran into a wall and then, oh wow, okay, it's over, game over, let me do it again.
Right.
But I want to talk a little bit about what is filament games.
Sure. Well, our company, like I said, is just founded to make playful experiences. So a lot of times those look like games. Sometimes they're simulations. Sometimes they're more of an experience. And we develop on all sorts of platforms. So obviously for PC browser, for mobile phones, mobile tablets. But we've also had a chance to work with like custom smart toy companies. We've done work in virtual reality and augmented reality. So we always say we're a company that every time we go to work, we do something new. So we just have really good technologists and great designers, and we just take on the challenge of whatever our clients do. So most of what we do is we get hired by other organizations to make games for their clients and their learning objectives. But we have the expertise to make the game, and then our clients own the game and take them to market. So some of our clients are nonprofits or universities where they, once we're done, they actually, because their work is grant funded, a lot of times the requirement of the grant is that they give the game away for free, and that's why I was able to send you that long list of games that we've made that are out there for free. But then we also work for like ed tech companies like McGraw or Scholastic. We do work for corporate training departments. We do work for health tech companies that are looking at using technology and games to improve health. So it really runs the gamut. So that's the focus of a lot of our work. It's our bread and butter. We love doing client work. It's always a new challenge. STEM, of course, is perfect for learning games because STEM is always all about doing. So we can replicate a lot of those actions in a video game. And then sometimes Filament applies for our own grants to work on projects that we're really passionate about. About 5 years ago, we actually created a whole suite of middle school science video games that kind of went to market and are used in schools around the world. Unfortunately, it was 2013 when we started that effort, and the prevailing technology is Flash, and Flash is going away, so that product is no longer going to exist for the browser. But in the last few years, we won a big grant from the National Science Foundation to make a new video game that we're really excited about. It comes out in January, and it's called Roboco, where...
I saw that.
Yes! And we're so excited. It hasn't been played yet. It hasn't been released yet. It gets released in January. But essentially, it recreates kind of a typical middle school or high school robotics kit in a game. So it's set up kind of like Minecraft. Half of the game is like creative mode in Minecraft, where it's just a big open warehouse space, and you can tinker and make whatever robots you want. You can, navigate it through the space. You can bump into objects and stuff. And then the other part is the game that actually gives you a really carefully thought out level of challenges, that every challenge is a little bit harder than the one before. You get new pieces and parts every time you advance. And the great thing is usually robotics is you need a really knowledgeable teacher, or parent volunteers have to bone up on robotics. Real traditional robotics, it's pretty expensive to buy the kits. And by making it virtual and making it into a game, there's no instruction manual. The game just starts introducing you to each part one by one and shows you how to put them together and gives you challenges to try your knowledge. And when you fail and your robot doesn't work, it goes, all right, get up, try again. So we're really excited about that one too.
And you just mentioned something that for some generations has not been really applied, and that's failure. We learn from failure, And that was one of the things as I was reading through a lot of your stuff and watching some of the videos that you have online. You allow the kids to fail, or the people who are working with this to fail, because that's how we learn. Think
Yeah.
of think of riding a bike. When you first started riding a bike, you fell down a bunch of times
Yep.
before you were able to get it. You're like, okay, if I don't balance myself and I fall, I may skin my knee. And that's what I like about this.
Mhm.
And when I say fail, I don't mean you fail so bad, whatever. You try something and then you're able to try it again. It's a total learning
Well, it's
process,
the
and
perfect
I think.
practice of
Mhm.
STEM practice. You know, people
Exactly.
don't come up with a solution in science or math the first time. You have to try again. So it really mimics
Mhm.
that. I think that's what's
Yes.
wonderful about games. It's funny, we had a robotics coach pretty early on in our development kind of just come into the studio and try what we had made so far. And we had just really gotten together, like the robot parts and building. And he goes, you know how I'm going to use this in my classroom? He's like, when we prototype a new robot, it can take a kid up to 2 weeks to
Yeah.
build one robot. And then it's like this high stakes, after 2 weeks is this high stakes moment where, okay, you worked on this for 2 weeks and now you've got to show everyone as you've done, and it's kind of like a high stakes, nerve wracking, difficult thing. He's like, I can prototype a robot in 5 minutes in your game. So he's really excited to use it almost as a pre-prototyping, like
Yeah.
let's get all your creative ideas out in digital, and then once you have something you like, let's go over to our kits and try to build it. I thought that was a really cool use of it.
But I mean, that is a great application because, in some skills, especially in engineering and technology skills, we have moved away from the scientific method. We're moving more toward the engineering design method, whereas you you build something and then you're constantly making it better. You're
Mm-hmm.
constantly making it better. And he's so right. You get your prototype, and I've been there. I've been that teacher teaching kids how to build robots. And then after that, they build them, then they have to program them. And then they have to synchronize their particular robot they built with another group's robots. And for me, it was a 3 to 4 week ongoing process until we got to the end. If I had have had something to say, okay, this is where you start, this is where you do your design, this is where you make some of the choices, that would have been just phenomenal, phenomenal.
Mm.
But I can see this being a big factor in a lot of classrooms. So.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're excited, and we're trying a different model than we did. We had this library of science games which we sold to schools, and it was millions of dollars in investment. And even when we were charging 45 cents a student, it's just too much for some schools. Like,
Yeah.
it's just the price. So we're with Roboco, we're doing it different. We're going for mass adoption. So the
Mhm.
core sandbox and all the pieces and parts, and I keep putting my foot down of, like, they're like, well, maybe we can keep these parts as a premium, and I was like, no, because I want, if you're just going to use the free version, you're going to get all the pieces of parts, because I know some schools are just going to be able to use the sandbox without the game, just the parts. And I
Yeah.
want eventually those schools to show up at our tournaments and beat everyone. So to
Okay.
be able to create equity at the tournament, I felt it was really important that the free and the paid, but also the free people have access to all the ports, because I don't want students competing trying to learn parts they've never seen.
Oh.
So that's how we're running it. So I'm really excited about that part too. That I feel
Okay.
like it's just going to be able to get into many more students' hands all around the globe, and our commitment is going to be that the open version is going to be free forever. So I'm excited about that.
Okay. Now you just mentioned something I didn't realize or didn't know about. tournaments. Tell me a little bit about that. A little
Yeah, well,
bit.
tournaments, it's funny. Well, it's interesting, right? Because a big part of when robotics is part of an after school program or a club or even like non-school robotics clubs, like the tournament culture is just really big, right? It's like football athletes go play games and robotics teams go to robotics tournaments. When we interviewed as part of our market research of like how much it costs a school to send a team to a robotics tournaments, I mean, if they get far enough, they are traveling across the country. Sometimes they're getting on planes. They're staying in hotels. And a lot of these schools were reporting like one robotics tournament can be up to $25,000. So we're really excited that we're going to be able to offer virtual tournaments. I mean, our game is all virtual. Yeah. So the idea, you know, the good news is that esports is still like new, but there's a lot of technology to facilitate esports tournaments. And esports is different. That's for commercial games that are kind of usually pretty fast and you have to be pretty nimble to play. Robotics tournaments are not a twitchy game, right? They're kind of you get time to build your robot and then there's kind of an event. So yeah, we're excited. We're committed. So this year, even though we launch in January, we're right now recruiting teachers who want to be closed alpha testers in September. And they're going to have access to the early version, every version as it comes out until launch and all year. So if anyone wants to be a closed alpha tester for Roboco, we start in September and you are welcome to come. And I'm committed I'm committed that you have you'll always have free access, but you'll have access through the year. So even if it's like, and we are going to have some kind of tournament in the spring for those schools that kind of stuck with us through all the versions this year, so we can kind of see how a virtual tournament goes and kind of get people showing off what they've made in Roboco. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, you saw my hand go up because I am supposed to be the STEM teacher at my school this year. They're taking me from 7th grade science and letting me do the STEM classes. And I am utterly and totally excited to be back in my nest again. Although, you know, science is my thing, STEM is my thing. My hand is up. It's up, y'all. I want to be part of this.
Yes,
so I can talk about this.
Well, we should reveal to your listeners. That's how we met. Is I found you on Facebook, and I was like, I want to recruit you to be a volunteer closed alpha tester for Roboco, and you were like, yes, and come on my show. Like, yes, we are going to happen.
So see, you know, we're making these friendships now. You're part of this community now. So anytime you have something that you need put out, send it to me. I'm constantly posting. That's how I get a lot of my content. Now, in going through a lot of the information that you sent me, one of the things that stood out is engaging with people of every age. So how are you doing that with, let's say, someone of my age? And I'm saying this because my friend Ann is online, either her or her husband, and they're in Thailand, and she's always looking for something to do.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's great. Well, you know, I think when we think about video games, so we get hired to make games for, I mean, the youngest was literally 2-year-olds, so tiny, all the way to senior citizens. So we are open to the whole range, and it just depends what projects come in at what time. I will say I don't think so much in terms of what your physical age is, but I do think about a player, and I think about their digital literacy age.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Like, my parents are in their 70s, and they have never touched a smartphone, and we tried to get them one for emergency use, and they got it, and the battery drained, and they never used it. But I know other 70 years olds who have the latest model of mobile phone, and they use everything on it. So first of all, I want to be really clear that, I want to be really clear that you can make some general assumptions about the population that you're building an experience for. and their digital literacy. And we do often have to make those assumptions, but there's a lot of variety within an age graphic. But basically, that's what it comes to. You come down to what are their digital literacy, so we can assume that a person living in, North or South America or Western Europe who's in their early 20s will be pretty comfortable with like the internet and a computer, where maybe someone who's 50, who's in a third world country and limited internet access, they're going to have a different digital experience. I think the second thing you think about is just preference. You think about, like, when you think about what world am I going to put this person in, what is going to be the time in history that they visit, visually what appeals to them. We can kind of think about that at different age groups. And you talked about kind of people who are middle-aged to seniors, but that's also when we look at like the difference. Sometimes I have clients call and they're like, we want to make a game about math, and it needs to appeal to 3-year-olds and to 7-year-olds. And you're an educator, you know that like the difference in math skills with just 4-year range is like incredible. So we also have to look at for school-age kids, so 2-year-olds to higher ed. We just base our game, what we think they can do, we just base it on the curriculum.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I like about Filament Games is you align with curriculums for not only your STEM, but you also do some things with languages and with different subjects, social studies, math. I mean, it's not just, oh, we're doing robotics, we're doing science, we're doing CPR. You do a lot with a variety of subjects, but you align it with the curriculum for those specific subjects. And do you know how big that is, especially now where a lot of the schooling is going to be online?
Mm-hmm. No, we have to. I mean, look, we've spent years, we've always had teachers part of our process. And when I mean, the amount of pressure you are to kind of teach that full curriculum during the year, every minute of every day of every week has to be productive for something in your curriculum. I went to school in the 70s. We weren't always productive. But now it's like, we've got huge tests to test for. So we realize, I mean, it's already a stretch. Like, there's some teachers who are early adopters, and I would say even with games, teachers who are kind of in the middle are embracing it. But we know that if we create something, like, it needs to be seen as additive and something helpful to schools that not only the teacher and the student will find value in, because there's no time for extraneous things.
No.
Yeah, and we get clients who are more from from entertainment or from industry, and they come up with an idea to create a digital product for schools, and they might have ideas of what they want to teach, and we always then are like, okay, well, what standards are you looking at? What standards? Yep, we have to go math, and see what is expected of a first grader for science or a sixth grader for civics. Like, we can't, material needs to be covered.
It has to be. And, as you said earlier about an earlier program that ran on Flash that is already outdated or becoming
December
outdated.
2020 is RIP
Really?
Flash. Yeah. It's just a couple of months away, 6 months away.
Yeah. And
all the content that teach, I think it's the worst time. I mean, it's the year where everyone in the world is virtual. And, get the word out to your teacher friends, because if they're relying on Flash games, January you won't be able to use them.
Okay, I'm writing that down.
Yeah.
My brain just stopped. But audience, ladies and gentlemen, if you are just now joining us, I have Jeniffer from Filament Games on today. She is the Vice President of Sales, but it is evident that she's more than just the Vice President of Sales, because she's giving us information about filament games, about how they're aligning curriculum, about changes in the system. So that means she knows a lot more about the product than just selling it or just
Mhm.
sales. And Jennifer, before we go any further, because I want to make sure you're able to tell us this information a couple of times, how
Sure.
would my audience find Filament Games? What's your website? Where would they find
Sure.
information? All that stuff.
Well, cool. Thank you so much. Yes, if you want to come see some of our work, I invite you to come to our website, www.filamentgames.com. We're also on all the social media platform if you enjoy social media. So Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. We want to connect with you everywhere. Like I said kind of earlier in the call, we make mostly games for our clients. And one
Yes.
thing we did do when, most of the world went to emergency remote learning, is we did kind of, we have a blog on our website at
Yes.
filamentcanes.com. And we have a blog, and we created a blog posting. It's called, if you just search for Schools Out, you'll see we compiled every free game that we've ever made for a client, and it crosses all age groups. It's all mostly K-12 games, but it crosses all disciplines, and we've just linked them all for our clients. So if you're looking for, I know especially in the summer where, me included, as well as many of my parents' friends, it is challenging to keep these kids busy when everything has been
Yes.
canceled this summer. So my recommendation is if you find the blog at Free Drains, you can trust that all of those games are well designed, they are curriculum aligned, and they're high quality content, so you can feel really comfortable having your kids or kids in your life play them.
Yeah. And me being a teacher, yeah, I went to the blog and I, fiddled around with a lot of the
Yeah.
things. Me being a teacher, using some of those games, I can, and this is just my own personal opinion, I can give that to a student and then I can have them give me feedback. Okay, what did you learn? How far did you get? What did you do? I can go through the game myself and come up with questions. And, that takes some of the redundancy out of read this, answer these questions
Yeah.
to the kids. Because I had to go to emergency online teaching when um, when the pandemic first started, and having something to keep them interested. Because in talking to several of my teacher friends across the U.S. and internationally, a lot of their kids just dropped off.
I know. We heard the
They
same thing in
just
our school district.
they started out strong and then they dropped off. So this may be something to be that treat to keep them engaged and involved and still learning because you
Hmm.
are so academically aligned. So yeah,
Yeah.
we got to think about that.
Yeah.
Um, Now we've talked about a lot of things. We I have on here learning products, and we've talked about that some.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about some of the organizations, if you can, that y'all have supported. I know you've done some things for the Smithsonian, but
Yeah.
some of the you know a little bit about some of the organizations and museums and things that y'all have supported, if you can.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, so one of our longest standing client is an organization called iCivics. And
Okay.
they were founded by former Justice Sandra Day O'Connor.
Oh.
And she really believed that, um, you know, our best chance for kind of America in the future was to have, for the biggest hole she saw is that people, when they're supposed to be learning at civics, don't really understand civics the way it's meant to be understood. And as a result, she felt that some of the drop off when these students get to voting age is because they don't really understand how government works, and they don't
Exactly.
understand their role in government. They don't understand that, right? We're the customer here. We're the people. And they don't understand, and that's how people just don't get interested, or they're overwhelmed and they don't want to vote for the wrong person, so they don't vote. So they've been plugging on this for over 10 years.
Wow.
The story is great. She was thinking about different approaches, video, maybe something, and she was put together with one of the seminal researchers in game-based learning called James Paul G. At the time, he was at the University of Wisconsin. He's now down in Arizona. And someone said, "Oh, you should connect with, James Paul G. He's doing some really interesting work." And at the time, he was really studying like commercial video games, and he wanted to know why people are addicted to video games. He wanted to understand how people could invest, smart people could invest so much time in video games, and he wanted to understand it. And his research focused on basically the results of his research were people love video games because video games are learning tools. They're like, they keep you feeling good about your doing, but there's just more to do or to conquer, and you got to figure out how to do it, right? They keep you like in that zone of proximal development where it's not so easy that you're bored, but not so hard that it feels impossible. So he shared some of his research, and lo and behold, he convinced her, or maybe he didn't convince her, but after that meeting, former Justice Sandra Day O'Connor was like, we're going to do this all with video games. So now today, iCivics.org has over 20 video games in every area of civics education. They cover the entire middle school curriculum of learning objectives for civics, and they now are into high school, and they even have curriculum for elementary school. One of the premises that former Senator Justice put in was that the curriculum, the dashboards, as well as all the games would always be free. And now iCivics is used in 95% of American civics classrooms.
Really?
Yeah.
I had not heard of iCivics till I saw it when I was researching your platforms. And I've got to make sure I tell our social studies teachers about that, because that's something they can add to their arsenal, because not just because of what's going on, but period.
Yeah.
Now with everything being technology based and every student having access to technology in the classroom, the more we can plug in with organizations such as Filament Games, iCivic, Smithsonian, and different places, is making our world a lot easier, especially for me being a science person and being a STEM person. I don't have to know everything.
Right.
Because the kids...
Yeah. That is hard. I think that's the number one impasse with video games, is there's so many teachers who are like, oh, I'd have to spend so many hours to learn the video game so I can help them with it if they get stuck. And it's like, don't worry, your kids have the video game parts. Fine.
They got that down pat.
To figure it out. You know the content.
Yep. You know the content, but they can pick up so much more.
Yeah.
Because
so another client that I think was really awesome, it's right when VR, maybe 3-4 years ago, when virtual reality was making its next comeback. And we happened to meet the people at Oculus, which is owned by Facebook. And they had created a small but mighty education team, because it's just so obvious that virtual reality is a great learning tool, right? You're fully immersed, and you get to be in situations and places and do things with your body. It's like kinetic physical learning, where as you move in a space, it's so intuitive. But they felt like they really wanted to make an investment in creating some really high quality learning content to kind of show the world how their devices could be used for education. So it was really awesome. They had heard about us because we were known for educational games. We had done some VR work, and they had us just pitch ideas. And it was hard because it was like, okay, well, you have to be at least, 13 legally to use VR because we don't know the long-term impacts on children's brains. So think middle school, high school, and we pitched, I think we started with like 12 ideas, and then we got down to 8, and it just wasn't like we had some great ideas, but they weren't feeling it. And then suddenly it was that December, I can't remember what year, but it was that December that Hidden Figures was released.
Yep.
And it was like everyone just dropped everything and bought tickets and went to go see that movie. And I felt like it had such a big impact, and not only to learn about these 3 women in science, but it was headlined by an all Black female cast, and it was just there. So she said, well, why don't we go, how about if we take people in VR into the lives of 3 famous female scientists? And she's like, and she happened to be reading a 800-page biography of Marie Curie. So when someone reads a book, they just think about them all the time. So she's like, how about we do something like Hidden Figures, but instead of a 2-hour story, let's make people go into their work environment, see where these women worked, what they were faced. And she's like, I want to talk about the science and their important discoveries and achievements, but I also just want to showcase like their family life and like what they did outside of work, and just to know that they were really whole people. I think a lot of times when we think about, famous people in history, we know them for their accomplishment. And it's so easy to put them on a pedestal, like they were some deity that did this awesome thing. But it's hard to think that they're you and me. They, prepare meals 3 times a day. And if they have children, they do laundry, and, they're real people. So that was a great project, because we were so excited about the idea. They loved it. It ends up that in the experience you go into the world of Marie Curie, and you go into her lab where, I don't know, the story. She set up like a workspace with her husband in her backyard, and you see the leaky roof, and we poured through her biography, and the floor was made of mud. Like you would never think that some of the greatest discoveries in science happened in someone's backyard, in a shed with a leaky roof. And there she is, The second person we did was Grace Hopper. And we took you to she was given some space, like in the basement in one of the buildings at Harvard. Like it was just a no window basement, and they kind of worked on, one of the first, coding languages and kind of the concept of bugs. And she designed the coding language of COBOL, which was the first intuitive programming language that was based on the English language. And I always think, well, of course it took a woman to invent that. Like something that everyone can understand and read and get it. Yeah. And then the third woman we picked was Jane Goodall, and she was the only of the 3 women who is still alive. And I think if I would have called her, she would have never picked up the phone. But the nice thing about working with Oculus is they're part of Facebook, and somehow they managed to get her foundation's attention. And she herself said, I want to be part of this. And so we designed her whole space and story. She was like, nope, that didn't go there. We created a tent where you go into the tent where she stayed when she was in Africa studying apes. And then also kind of a visitor center to learn more. So she wasn't like a rubber stamp. She was like, nope, crop this out. Like there were so many edits. And then she agreed to voice her part.
Really?
I know. Which is awesome. I mean, we never got to meet her. She like cut the audio. She was, she's still so active, and she was traveling the world. She got, she found a time to meet with an audio recorder who just went into a studio and recorded her voice. But I don't know, we felt so special. We won a Webby Award for it and a bunch of awards. It was fantastic. And then because Oculus had kind of decided to fund a couple of experiences to just get VR and education out, we kind of all mutually agreed that we wouldn't charge for it. So it's one of the few, there's not too much free VR content, but that experience is free and it'll be out there. So that was a fun one.
That is, I mean, y'all are not only doing this, but you're also breaking boundaries, because you're looking at people from different aspects, women, minorities, different sciences. You're looking at their real lives, because we don't get to see that. We get to learn their names and what they did, but we don't get to step into the content of their life. I mean, everybody knows about Anne Franks and all of that and where she was. But when you look at the Katherine Johnsons, like I was able to interview Katherine Johnson's granddaughter. I was at an interview where she was speaking.
Nice.
And she talked about how her grandmother used to take you remember, I don't know how you are, you may be too young, when printer paper first came out, it was all connected and had the holes down the side. Yeah, I found a stack of that in my file cabinet when I was home the other week. But she said her grandmother would bring home stacks of that, and they would draw on it or do math problems or whatever. And when she said that, that made me think, oh my God, this is a real person. This isn't, wow, I know.
Right.
But,
well, I wonder if there's, we have this it's predicted by 2025, there's going to be 2 million open STEM jobs in the U.S. 2 million.
Yeah.
And it's like, how are we going to fix it? And I sometimes think even, I'm not even young people, but me, you just, science is kind of opaque. We can see, we get into the lives of actors and actresses, and we see the lives of sports people, and even I think a lot of people, if they want to choose teaching as a profession, they've been in classrooms when teachers, they've seen teachers up close. But I feel like STEM, it's so hard to make it look relevant, and it just feels grown up and something out there for other people.
Yeah. But I mean, and y'all are doing that. You're making it real. You're making it a part of life, a part of reality, because that's one of the things in STEM we don't do. We separate STEM, and we've got 3 minutes left. We separate STEM into the science, the technology, the engineering, and the mathematics, and now STEAM when you add art. But we don't put them together. I mean, I've worked real hard to put them together in every aspect of what I did or what I do. But that's taken me effort. Mm-hmm. It takes an effort to do that, when you're teaching science, to have them draw the organism, to have them label it, to have them, do all these things with it, other than to just learn what it is. To measure it, you add all of the aspects with it. Mm-hmm. So what y'all are doing is bringing, as you say, we create playful experiences that improve people's lives. I made sure I had that written down. So you do that, and that's amazing. But we've got 2 minutes left. And if you just have anything that you want to put out, anyone that you want to thank or mention, please take this time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll end with, a lot of, we're in a hard time in history with a lot of going on. And I think a lot of parents, friends of mine who aren't in the video game business are really concerned about their kids only want to play games, right? That's the flip of it. I love what I do. I love what we games. But then there's the flip of all these parents are like, okay, I know you work in video games, but my kid doesn't want to do anything else. And what do you do about that? And I think in I'll give you my advice. I don't know if it's right or wrong. It's some I read a lot of the research about it, but it's really my opinion. I just think these are incredibly hard times where we're not allowed to really leave our house or do
Yeah.
anything normal. I think for some kids, video games is escapism where they can go outside in the game and do things that feel courageous and brave and adventurous, all adventures that they can't have right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of think like I know it's making a lot of parents nervous, and I would just say, of course, we all live in human bodies. We still all have to move our bodies. We need to connect with people, but I would just like parents to kind of, put away the guilt they might have or
Yeah.
concern, and just know it's for a period of time. And whether it's escapism, if their kids feel like it's a way to like balance out their anxiety, if it's a way to connect with friends out online, if they play games where they
Yeah.
get to talk to their friends and play with them, my advice is to just try to be okay with it for the moment. Even if this goes on for another year, it's not going to be forever.
Yes.
And keep an eye on it. Make sure they're playing high quality games that are that align with your values. But it's going to be okay.
And one thing you didn't mention, play with them.
Yes.
Play some of the games with them.
Especially, my kids are 13 and 15, so a lot of the parents I know are that age, and they're like, oh no, I was like, what? You can get on a computer? Try it. You might like it. And they're like, oh, but my kid's so good. And they're like, they're going to get a kick about you even trying.
Yeah, play with them.
Yeah,
Because that's gonna bring you together. Well,
Yeah.
Jennifer, I have had such a wonderful time with you.
Likewise.
Don't forget me.
I won't.
With me being the STEM instructor this year, please put us in that beta testing. I think my kids are gonna love it. We're here on the island, and some of our kids are coming back, some of them are not. But this will be a situation where they can all still connect, no matter where they are.
Yep.
So please, 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 don't
Absolutely.
forget, put us on that list. And I want you to take care. And y'all, she is part of the club. I think she is a little ahead of us on the club, the group of us that we call ourselves STEM moms, because she has a book about it.